In today's video, I'm going to show you guys why the Sony A7C is a fantastic camera to pick up in 2021. We're going to look at things like why I chose this camera, the ergonomics, image quality, video quality. So if you're into that stuff, then hang on for the ride. Let's get right into it. Alright, so here it is folks, the Sony A7C released back in October 2020, and in today's video, I'm going to share with you guys why this is the one to choose if you shoot a lot of YouTube or travel videos on the go. So to begin, I've had this camera for about 2 months now, and I've used it extensively for YouTube, home videos and travel films, and all I can say is, wow, this camera is absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, this camera has its limitations, and I'll be sure to mention them later on in this video, so stay tuned for that. So why would the Sony A7C be the camera for choice in 2021? There are a whole heap of cameras out there like the Panasonic S5 or the Canon R6, and those cameras all do a fantastic job in what they offer. But I mainly chose this camera not only due to the crazy good autofocus, the compact size and portability of the full frame camera, but also because of the flip out screen. Now I came from a background with the Sony A6300, the A7S2 and the A7R2, and those cameras didn't have flip out screens, so to actually have one on a full frame Sony camera, for me was absolute game changer. When I'm vlogging and such, I don't have to put monitors on top and make it a bulky rig. I can just handhold it like this, flip out the screen and get awesome Sony autofocus. In the frame, if I want to get close, it's still going to focus on me. If I get back. Now I know that a lot of people don't like the fact that the Sony A7C doesn't offer a few of the custom function buttons that are found on the A7 III, or that it lacks a few essential buttons. However, the available buttons can be assigned to other functions of your liking, such as picture profile selection, audio levels, white balance, autofocus or manual focus selection, and so forth. Now, like many others, I was highly considering picking up the Sony A7S III, but I really had to think about it, and all the basic stuff I was planning to shoot with the camera, like YouTube or vlogs and some B-roll, and for all my needs, I just decided to choose the Sony A7C. Now looking at the ergonomics of the camera, it's quite good. The buttons all feel well positioned and everything is easy to navigate. It's a minimal design which I absolutely love. However, I do wish the menu button was placed around the control dial just for easy reach and easy access. The grip is comfortable and well designed, especially in comparison to some of the Sony APS-C cameras, but it may not feel as comfortable for some users with bigger hands. Now looking at the viewfinder, I have to say that this 2360K dot viewfinder has to be one of the worst viewfinders I've used on a Sony full frame camera. I mean, I've come from the Sony A7S2 and the A7R Mark II, and those things are absolute gems, but looking into this thing, I have to say I've come into a few issues with like distortion on the sides, even fixing like this little diopter here and getting better clarification. I just can't really highly recommend, using this thing for accurate photography. I mainly use the screen anyway, but it's still not Sony's top of the line. Alright, so now we're looking at image quality, and I have to say that this is where the camera shines. The Sony A7C has a 24 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor, and I have to say I absolutely love the raw photos coming from this camera. It's an absolute joy to shoot and edit with, little effort in post. Skin tones, detail and color come out really nice, and you shouldn't have much issues taking awesome photos with this camera. Alright, now looking at the video quality, I have to say that I'm very impressed with the video output of the Sony A7C camera. I mainly shoot 24, 25 frames per second, and when I want slow motion I just switch over to the S&Q mode and then shoot 1080p slow motion up to 120 frames per second. And yes, it's still 8-bit 420, and I think that's one of the big issues Sony had when this camera came out. People weren't willing to spend the price for something that was just still 8-bit. A lot of people were let down, but overall I have to say that the 8-bit codec is still very good if you know how to use it. I found that using the correct picture profiles, settings and post work, you can actually get really nice video quality out of this camera. Like many people, I too was skeptical about the 8-bit codec, but I have to say that I'm very pleased with the results. I sometimes use the Sony A7C with an Atomos Ninja V, allowing it to shoot ProRes 8-bit 422, which I find easy to use with Final Cut Pro X or DaVinci Resolve. Low light performance is great, as with most Sony full frame cameras. Shooting indoors, I had no issues getting clean results, even with a slow lens. Here is a few cinematic shots that I got whilst I was inside a little furniture place. Now, all these shots were done with the Sony A7C mounted to a Moser Aircross gimbal, and my main lenses of choice is the Sony 28-70 kit lens. Absolutely love that one, and the Sony 35mm f1.8, which I used to get these shots. Now, looking at autofocus, with the right settings on the Sony A7C, you can without doubt expect superb autofocus performance, especially with face and eye phase detection autofocus. I tried to trick the system as much as possible, but all in all, it did a fantastic job in keeping focus, and I can definitely say that it will be reliable in most shooting situations. Now, in terms of using this camera for YouTube, travel films and vlogs, I find that the battery will last up to an hour or a bit more, but I've had no issues with this as I tend to use a portable power bank about 10,000 milliamps, and this would get you really good amounts of record time. Now, to set this up, I simply attached a monitor mount to the small rig base plate. I then secured a smartphone selfie clamp to the back in order to hold the power bank in place. Now, this solution will get you very good amounts of record time if you're doing tutorials and stuff like that. And in general, the record time will depend on the power bank you use. So some range from 5,000 to 10,000 all the way up to 80 or 100,000. I find that for general YouTube videos, 10,000 is enough. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about the things that I don't like about the Sony A7C camera. Now, these are my personal opinions. These are the things that I personally come across and don't particularly like, but they're not like major drawbacks, so just keep that in mind. Alright, so first off is build quality. Now, for a camera at this price, it doesn't feel as well built as, say, the Sony A7R II or the A7 III or even the A7S II. I found that with my copy, the silver version, the top material can scratch and dent easily, so you really need to be extra cautious in the way that you use this camera. If you drop it or if you hit it on something, then you're going to see big scratches and dents that are going to be hard to fix. So in this case, I'd highly recommend getting a skin cover off eBay or Amazon in order to protect the cosmetics of the camera. I also noticed that this camera can get really hot and overheat with a lockup warning, and these cases were found in scenarios that weren't really hot, so even with a normal room temperature, this camera could potentially overheat. The Sony A7 III fixes these issues, so that might be more of a serious camera if you're planning on shooting weddings for long periods of hours. Last but not least is the HDMI micro port. It's not a huge deal, but I wish it was at least a mini HDMI, as it feels quite fragile and breakable. Alright, so now it's time for my overall thoughts on the Sony A7C camera. It's 2021, a lot of cameras are coming out. Does this camera still have a place in this day and age? So firstly, I think that we should focus on the content and story of what we're delivering. I see this camera as a YouTuber or filmmaker's companion in a small, compact, light, full-frame body. It has great image and video quality with superb autofocus to track you reliably, and with a flip-out screen, you'll be able to get the right framing when you're filming yourself out in the field or on YouTube. You won't have much issues shooting in low light thanks to excellent low light performance, and I have to say I have loved and enjoyed every bit of shooting with this camera. And if you're really considering picking up this camera, then it definitely won't be a wrong choice in this day and age. I mainly chose this over the Sony A7 III because of the form factor, the flip out screen, and the slight advancement in autofocus. However, you can't really go wrong with any of those cameras, and if you're mainly a photographer, then the A7 III or the A7R III may be your best bet. So overall, I think that this day and age in 2021, this is still a fantastic camera of choice. When I first purchased it, it was around $3,000 Australian dollars, and now it's gone down to 2,300. So this camera is getting cheaper, and I definitely think it's a worthy option if you're thinking about upgrading from an APS-C to a full-frame camera. I'd love to share with you guys how I go about shooting on the Sony A7C in future videos, you know, the picture profiles that I use and how I grade it in post, so you guys can get great image quality out of this camera. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.